Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingston, Texas, USA, with another episode of Torah Talk Weekly Parsha. Coming back again, a dear friend for all of us now, he's been introduced to our channel, Rabbi Uri Jaskiel. How are you, Rabbi? It is a pleasure having you back.
I'm great. Glad to be back.
That's great.
Thanks
to
for
hear.
that warm introduction.
You're very welcome. And before we get going too far, let's put this on the screen so everybody knows where to find you after the fact, or even during the show. If you have something pressing, Rabbi Uri Jaskiel can be found at uri.jaskiel at eosworldwide.com. And of course, you know that's a website, so you can also find his website, eosworldwide.com. So that being said, I guess we'll move right on into this. So Parshat Re'eh, if you don't mind, maybe give us a quick, just a really brief 30-second summary, if you want to, of last week's Parsha, which is leading us up to where we're at now.
Okay, that is a great question. I'm going to stick to Re'eh, actually, because it is so loaded.
Okay, gotcha. And plus, I don't think you have much
like
time either, right? You're kind of pressed for time,
I want to
too.
give us... I just want to take advantage of the time to just dive in, because there's so much in this Parsha, and I don't think we'll be able to cover everything. Okay,
so that is perfectly fine. Absolutely.
So this week's Torah portion is Parshat Re'eh, and I want to try to lump it into three different themes: sort of the sanctity in time, the sanctity in place, and the sanctity in people. So maybe the word sanctity does resonate. It's the holiness of time, the holiness of a place, and the holiness in people. And just think of those themes as we flow through this Parsha, because there's just so much going on here in this Torah portion. And the Torah portion opens with the words Re'eh, which literally means see. See. The difference between belief and see is the degree of clarity. Things that we see right in front of us. You're looking at me now. It's vivid. It's palpable. You actually can see it and feel it. And so Re'eh, the Torah portion opens up and says, Re'eh anochi noten lefnechem hayom bracha uklala. See in front of you how, and I'm looking down because I'm just reading from the Torah portion, but see in front of you. God's talking to us and saying, I see in front of you, I give in front of you blessing and curse. And the blessing will flow in Asher Tishmu. It will flow if you listen to the commandments that I give you, that I command you today, and the curses will fall on you if you do not listen to them. V'sartem min abderech, and if you turn from the path that I am commanding you today to follow in these footsteps. And so God very clearly sets up an equation. These are the rules of engagement. And I think about these as a father and raising my children. And, as a parent, you have a tremendous amount of compassion, and you want to give and only give to your children. And what is that, where does that love for your children and that wanting to give, how is that manifest in their life? And so I think about this often when you sort of tell your children, if you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll be able to get this type of reward. If you don't do this type of behavior, you'll get this type of punishment. And then you see that they do 70% of the effort, but they don't get it to completion. So then as a parent, you feel like you want to be compassionate. You want to just give it to them anyway. But is that compassion? Is that compassion when then you give it to them anyway, and then they learn that? What did they learn in that? They learned maybe that it wasn't about their behaviors. It was a matter of whether daddy, tati, abba, whoever your children relate to you, whether you were just in the mood to give it to them. And so Torah thought gives us this feeling of there's precision. I think I've said this in the last time we got together, there's There's gevura shebechesed. There's discipline in the kindness. In our quest to be kind to our children, there's discipline, and that discipline is the greatest sense of kindness. So I just wanted to set that as the tone that we see in this Torah portion. We say, Re'ei anaychi, saying lefneichem hayoim bracha uklola, I am giving you this vivid ability to be able to see these are the rules of engagement of how I, as the creator of the world, will unlock blessing and bring curses to you. And so throughout the history, we see that God really in his ideal world wanted to engage and relate to the world from a tremendous place of precise din v'cheshbon, which means precise judgment. And that was a gift to humanity, so that we understood exact rules of engagement. And through our history, we see that in that world of precise judgment, we sometimes failed, and then God gave it, gave a little bit of a gift of mercy, of compassion that comes into that. And that yin and yang of din and cheshbon, of mercy and judgment, together with compassion, is where we have these rules of engagement. And so with that theme, I want you to let's take a look and sort of like the more of the deeper themes, and I'll take you quickly through the Parsha. So we see the first major theme is the sanctity of the land. The Jews were standing on the precipice of moving into Israel. And so God is laying out those rules of engagement and saying, you as a sanctified people, you as a holy people, are going to be brought into this holy land, and this is how I want you to relate to that holy land. And so he introduces the idea of centralized worship. The Jews are commanded to worship God at a single central location. At the time, they were in the desert. That was the Mishkan, that was the tabernacle. But as they came into Israel, they brought that tabernacle with them, and they settled that for many, many years in a place called Shiloh, but ultimately became the temple in Jerusalem. But this directive seeks to unify the people's worship and to prevent the pitfalls of a decentralized and potentially, in different sects of religious practices. And so the Torah lays the rules of engagement of not having private altars. And then follows from there, sharing the permission to eat from the different karbanot, the different offerings that were brought. And there are different rules related to all different types of karbanot. And it lays out that certain karbanot, certain offerings, that when you are partaking from eating them, they have parameters of only being eaten in Jerusalem. And then the Torah lays out some more principles of observance of relating to these altars and the sanctity of this centralized place of worship. Then the Torah talks about further dietary laws of kashrut. A significant part of the portion provides the details of which animals are permissible and forbidden to eat. And these laws help to define the people of Israel's unique relationship with God and put a responsibility to protect and respect the inherent holiness that they have as a people. And then the Torah talks about false prophets. And there's very stern warnings against false prophets, and emphasize this need for discernment in our spiritual leadership and the dangers of potentially being led astray by a charismatic but untruthful personality. And so this is a very stark language about truth and how charisma is not really where greatness lies, but in having a commitment to truth and that connection to godliness that was given on Mount Sinai. The Torah then flows from there and talks about really in depth of not about false prophets, but the individual accountability and the individual responsibility that every single person in the world as an individual has an achrayut. An achrayut is a Hebrew word for a responsibility and accountability to not entice and lead the next person astray away from that path of truth. And so the Torah is actually quite harsh about, and this is addressing the Jewish nation, but I think this is a universal theme. The Torah is very harsh, talking about if your brother or your son of your mother or your son or your daughter says, let's start worshiping false idols, that person is actually ultimately put to death. And so much so do we have this emphasis on pressure, social influence. The Torah then flows to talk about an ir nidachat, which means a wayward city, which you can have a city which the majority of the city is serving idolatry. Then even those that aren't serving idols are punished along with the city, because there's the nature and the tone of that city. This all sets the tone of the words of the Torah that talks about the relationship that the Jews have with God, which is that bonim atem, that they are referred to here in this Torah portion as children of God. Children of God means that they have a moral responsibility, and that relationship is one that they have to protect with an obsessive, really it sounds like almost an obsessive nature, which then flows into appreciating the fact that there's those dietary laws of what they are able to eat as what are those permitted and forbidden foods. The Torah portion then continues. It talks more about the aser to aser, the tithing one's livelihood, taking off a tenth of one's livelihood. In those times, they were agriculture, an agrarian culture, and this is really addressing primarily if sort of in your field or within your animals. But I encourage all my friends, I tell everybody that I can, and I share this with you, that you should have at the minimum 2 bank accounts. I have a book somewhere on my shelf called Profit First. If you're a business owner, Mike Michalowicz talks about having a lot of different bank accounts, one for your revenue, and then for your expenses, and then for your profits, and for your taxes, and using bank accounts to help you sort of manage your money effectively, not just, sort of using spreadsheets, but actually having different buckets. And so I encourage people on a personal level to have at the minimum 3 bank accounts, one for your operating expenses, one for your charity, and one for your savings. And so, so the Profit First talks about businesses, but as an individual also, you should be, from the money that you're earning, right away taking profit first, taking savings first, putting money into your savings, so this way you can be thinking about for the future. Because normal human beings, if you have an operating account, you'll spend as much as you have to be able to take care of whatever luxuries you want at the time. But my wife and I do this is we have a separate account for our tithe, 10% of our money. Right away, any payment from my wife's employer, and for me, from my business, any profits that I'm distributing, right away go into the account, and then 10% gets skimmed off into a charity account. And the reason why did you do that is because it's not your money. It creates a mindset of, this is not my money, this is money that God gave me as a messenger to be able to distribute to the people that do not have as much privilege as I do. And even this morning in synagogue, there was a number of people that were collecting money, and it was a lot easier for me to be able to say to them with a smile, "How can I help you?" Because I had that money in that account that I was not. It was just a question of me being able to be a messenger to distribute that tithe. And the Torah portion then talks about the concept of Shemitah. We discussed this in a previous session together about the concept of every 7 years the land has to lay fallow. But there's another maybe less well-known law, which is that every 7 years, any outstanding loans that one gave to his friend, you absolve them of having to pay those loans back. And the Torah then says, okay, maybe then somebody that feels that, my loans are going to be absolved, then I shouldn't give them out. So the Torah admonishes us and says that you should not be concerned about the fact that you're going to lose your loan and close your heart. You should open them up. Later, as the rabbis saw that people were not taking this seriously, instituted certain parameters of how somebody could be able to lend somebody money over the long term. But I don't want to dive into that now. And then the Torah portion ends with this pilgrimage, the commitment, the commandment for Jews to travel to Jerusalem 3 times a year for the holidays of Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and to come to Jerusalem with these offerings. And so you see throughout this Torah portion, you see these 3 themes, and that's what came to me, which is the sanctity of who we are, the holiness of who we are as individuals, the holiness of time, and the holiness of a place. And they all really come together. They all really come together because if we're people that are trying to refine our greatness, if we are people that are trying to become more godly, then we choose locations based on that. We choose to be part of a society that allows us to be able to strengthen that. And I think that even this YouTube channel has highlighted the ability that people could be decentralized. They could be all over the world, but have a common mission, a common connection, a common theme, a common relationship, right? So it is possible to connect to brothers in arms. It is possible to connect to other people, like-minded individuals, through a sense of community, to work through things that may be challenging for you, to work through things, an opportunity to learn from one another. And that's great. And that is very special. But there's an added dimension. There's an added dimension of actually coming together in a holy place, and having that place that unifies people that draw a connection to one another. And so I want to just, in our final minutes together, it took me a little bit longer than I thought to actually go through the Parsha. Like I said, it was so loaded. That's why I didn't want to dive into last week's Torah portion. But I want to just emphasize these themes again. The Torah portion opens up with choice and consequences, right? This was God admonishing the Jews and presenting with them this choice between blessing and curses. This theme of moral choices and their consequences is universal. Every single person, regardless of their religious or ethnic background, is faced with moral decisions, and these decisions come with consequences. And so those decisions come with consequences. So the Torah sets the tone and says there's a danger in idolatry, right? And that danger of idolatry, that theme of a danger of idolatry, is giving us this feeling that those moral choices should not be made in a vacuum, right? The broader lesson is about not getting lost in a world of materialism, false ideologies, or anything that takes one away from what's true, the truth. And that truth should be shaping our community. It should be shaping centralized values. This emphasis on centralized worship for the Jews can be seen as a lesson for humanity about the importance of community and of shared values. Every single society benefits from a shared moral center. Even if the specifics of worship or of those rituals differ, every society benefits from a shared moral core. And that moral core is us, inside us, as individuals. It's that moral core comes from a shared place, whether that's a church or a synagogue or a tabernacle or a temple. Every society benefits from having a shared moral core. And then the dietary laws, while specific to the Jews, can inspire a broader conversation about ethical consumption. What do we consume? What we consume shapes who we are. And what we consume, how does that impact the world around us? And what ethical responsibility do we have regarding our consumption and what is societal norms around consumption? And the Torah highlights that we have to be careful about false leadership. The warning against false leadership is a cautionary note about the leaders that we choose to follow. Again, I'll remind you that leadership should not be based on charisma and false promises, but rather on truth, moral clarity, and the betterment of the community. And the principles of charity and social responsibility, those principles, taking care of the less fortunate and creating that just society, those are universal. The remission of debts that I mentioned during the Shemitah year, during the sabbatical year, and the command to care for the needy of aser to aser, of creating tithing, those are directives to create a more compassionate society. This is very much in line with the Noahide laws of establishing the courts of justice and creating that just society. So I just want to end with encouraging you to reflect. This wasn't such a long talk, but hopefully it was an impactful one. Every single person is constantly presented with choices. And those initial words of the Torah portion, "See, I am setting before you today a blessing or a curse," it serves as a powerful reminder of the agency and the responsibility that every single person has over their actions and decisions. And it inspires us to have self-reflection, encouraging us as individuals to choose the path of that moral growth. But it's not just an individual choice, it's a community choice. There's a collective choice of people that shape the character and the direction of us as a community. And so think about that. Think about that from a place of sanctity in time, sanctity in place, and sanctity in people. Of a holiness in time, a holiness in place, and a holiness in people. And so think about in your own life, where in your day, where in your week, where in your month, where in your year, there's holiness in your time. You're taking clarity breaks. You're taking clarity breaks. Where are you anchored? Where are you anchored? How do you start your day to anchor it in holiness and an elevated lifestyle? Jews pray 3 times a day. We start our day praying to reflect on the fact that the morning we reflect that the day is shaped by God. We stop for mincha, for the afternoon prayers, to remind ourselves that the day, no matter what we're doing in the day, it's directed by God. We end the day hanging our hat and saying, God, we tried our best today, and remind ourselves that our life is shaped by God.
Amen.
And so Where is that sanctity in time? That sanctity in time. And then also sanctity in place. Where in your life is like, I always think about as a little kid playing cops and robbers, right? Sometimes you got to run to base and feel secure, right? Or if you're playing laser tag and you got to boost up your gun and get some extra juice in it. Where's that sanctity in place in your life? As Jews, we believe that the home is the center of our lives. But beyond the home, right, there's so much that we strengthen our world. We strengthen our world in the synagogue. We strengthen our world by the land of Israel. And then the temple in Jerusalem. But where is that sanctity in place in your life? Where you go to be anchored in truth, be anchored to focus on a higher lifestyle. And then finally, where is that sanctity in you as a person? Where is that holiness as you as an individual? Are you taking the time to reflect about your inherent holiness as being created in the image of God? And what that means to your choices. And what that means to your choices. And what that means to your decision making. And what that means to be how you relate to yourself, how you relate to the next person, and how you relate to God. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. And have a wonderful, wonderful day. Re'eh. See.
Yep.
Receive the opportunity. See the beauty of a potential of a brighter future in yourself and in humanity.
You mentioned a couple things that was pretty important, I think. It's choice and consequence, not necessarily crime and punishment. Now, you didn't say crime and punishment. I did. But for me, it makes more sense looking at it as choice and consequences. And consequences can be positive, but those are really called rewards. But there's still consequence, If I turn off the oven at the right time, the consequence of that will be my food will come out perfectly cooked. Now, that would be a reward,
yes,
but the same thing, And so that's really helpful, I think as we and something else you mentioned, I said a couple things. We were talking about, starting things off right. I don't eat a lot of sweets, but I notice that when I wake up in the morning, if the meal that I choose to eat is actually like a bowl of cereal, which usually has sugar in it, I notice that I crave sweetish things throughout the day. But whenever I don't start off with that, and I eat like eggs and toast, I never think about sugar at all. I don't drink sweet tea. I drink black coffee. It really, starting the way you start off, it seems to be very critical. And if it's true on a spiritual level, that's kind of what I'm showing my kids is like if you'll start off your day with prayer, you'll probably be kind of like God-minded throughout the day. But if you start off just doing your own thing, you might forget about Hashem. And until it's like nighttime, like, oh my gosh, I went the whole day without this. So it's good stuff today. A tight package, very packed full of good nuggets. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And
thank you for hosting.
Yes, sir. And I look forward to having you on again. Don't tell Rabbi Rafi Mollot I look forward to him missing, but I do look forward to having you on again. So
Okay.
I hope you have a great week, Rabbi. Again, your time is precious to us as well as to you, obviously. And I'm looking forward to the next time we see each other. So you have a great week, and y'all should have a great Shabbat coming up on this Shabbat, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Take care, everybody. Shalom. Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNachTalk.com, TaNachTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה. השאיפה